What I'm about to tell you was one of the last memories I can still remember from my first real job after high school, and not for a good reason. I'd argue that it was the most disturbing thing that has ever happened to me. When I was 19, I didn't have a lot of close friends. The co-workers I did have were all a little odd, but then again, so was I. I worked at this cemetery in rural Ohio called Whispering Cedars. Sounds peaceful, right? Well, it was, I guess, during the day, not many people around. The air always smelled like pine needles and old earth. The dead didn't bother you much. It was the living you had to worry about. Or so I thought. Looking back, though, there were things I brushed off during the hiring process that I probably should have paid attention to. Like how the manager, old Mr. Lott, wouldn't meet my eyes when he handed me the graveyard shift schedule. Or how the only locker left in the break room had deep scratches all over the door, like someone tried to claw their way in. Or out. But I was broke and it paid cash, no questions, so I took it. My main job was digging and prepping grave sites, usually early morning or after closing hours. I liked the quiet. No phones, no pressure. Just me, a spade, and a playlist of true crime podcasts that got me through the work. Sometimes the head caretaker, Kenny, would keep me company. He was in his late 40s, skinny as hell, and always wearing the same ripped black hoodie, even in July. We called him Crow because he had this weird habit of collecting shiny junk from the graveyard, belt buckles, broken keys, a gold tooth once, and keeping them in an old tin lunchbox. Crow was the first to tell me about Section 9. He did it in the way people tell kids about the bogeyman, with a grin that says, "I'm joking," but eyes that don't match. Don't dig in Section 9 unless you're told. And if you are, don't work alone, he said once, puffing on a hand-rolled cigarette while we stood near the maintenance shed. Things don't stay buried out there. I laughed because what else do you do? Section 9 was an overgrown plot near the edge of the woods. There were only a few graves there, mostly from the late 1800s. Iron fences wrapped the whole thing, all rusted and bent like something big had pushed out from the inside. The first time I went near it was about 2 weeks into the job. I was trimming back some brush on the east side and saw a woman standing just inside the fence. Long gray dress, back turned to me, hands clasped in front of her like she was praying. I figured she was visiting a relative, so I gave her space and went back to my work. But when I glanced up again, she was gone. I hadn't heard her leave. I'll skip the boring stuff, the routine grave prep, the long, quiet hours. It was peaceful most nights. I'd take my breaks in the caretaker shack, drink terrible coffee from the vending machine, and listen to Crow go off about his theories. Stuff about ley lines, burial magic, cursed plots. I tuned out most of it. Then stuff started going. Missing. Not big things. First it was a photo from my wallet. Then the little rubber crow I kept on my locker as a joke. Then my name badge. Each time I thought, maybe I dropped it, or Crow's messing with me. But that creeping feeling you get like something's watching you just out of view, that started to follow me, especially near Section 9. One night, I was working late alone. Kenny had called out, and it was just me in the darkness. I had to prep a new grave in Section 3. Nothing unusual. But when I got to the tool shed, the shovel I always used, an old red-handled one I marked with blue tape, was gone. I searched for 10 minutes before finding it. Stuck blade down into the soil inside Section 9. That's when it hit me. I hadn't gone near Section 9 that day. No one had. It hadn't been opened in months. The gate was ajar. I stood there staring at it, every part of me saying to turn around and walk away. But I had to get the shovel. As I crossed through the rusted gate, the temperature dropped, like walking into a freezer. My ears popped. I remember that clear as day. And then the smell hit me. Not decay, not rot. It was sweet, like flowers that had gone bad, mixed with metal and mold. I reached for the shovel. The dirt around it was soft, wet, like it had just rained, but it hadn't. When I yanked it free, I heard something shift under the soil, something hollow. I backed away fast, heart pounding. I wanted to leave, but I also didn't want to look like a coward. So I told myself it was just a rabbit or a root giving way. But then I saw it. A hand. Gray, bloated, curled like it was reaching toward the surface. And there were drag marks, like it had tried to pull itself out. I ran. The next morning I told Mr. Lott. He gave me this tight smile and said, "Sometimes tree roots look like hands in the dark." I couldn't believe it. That thing wasn't a root. Crow didn't laugh, though. He nodded slowly like he'd been waiting. "Check your locker," he said. I did. Inside, sitting on top of my lunch bag, was my name badge. The one that had gone missing days before. It was covered in dirt and stuck to it was a piece of red thread. That same night, the woman in the gray dress showed up again. But this time, she was closer, standing by the maintenance shed, just outside the reach of the security lights. Face turned toward me, though I couldn't make out her features. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She just stood there, hands clasped, watching. I called out. No response. I shined my flashlight, and she was gone. Gone like she blinked out of existence. When I told Crow, he didn't ask for details. He just nodded and muttered, "She's picking someone." "What the hell does that mean?" I asked. "She picks one every 10 years or so, that's how it starts." That night I didn't sleep, and I haven't really slept since. For a while I convinced myself that what I saw was just stress, or a mix of bad sleep and too many hours around the dead. I told myself the hand had to be a tree root, that the woman was a trick of light, maybe even a leftover visitor who wandered off quietly. I kept thinking about how Crow looked when he said, "She's picking someone." Like he'd seen this happen before, like I was next. But I shoved it all down because I needed the job, because being broke and paranoid was still better than being broke and homeless. And honestly, there were a few weeks where things almost felt normal again. I had a routine. I'd come in just before dark, check in with Crow or Mr. Lott, grab my thermos of gas station coffee and get started on the night's tasks. It was winter by then, and the air turned sharp and clean. The kind of cold that makes the world feel simple. You're just trying to stay warm, keep moving, and finish the job. Some of the guys started talking to me more. Diego, one of the older diggers, showed me how to set headstones straight even in half-frozen ground. He liked to hum old country tunes while he worked, never the words, just the melody, always slightly off-key. Then there was Ty, a younger guy like me, who mostly worked days but would sometimes trade shifts. He had a cracked phone and a huge collection of ghost stories, most of them made up. He'd try to scare me while we smoked by the back fence, but after what I'd already seen, his tales felt like cartoons. Even Crow loosened up a bit. We started sharing smokes, weirdly enough. He'd sit outside the caretaker's shed and toss me one, always unfiltered, always rolled tight. We talked about music, bad horror movies, and how messed up the vending machine coffee was. For a guy who creeped me out at first, he started to feel like the only person who might get it. He never pushed me about Section 9 again, but I caught him staring at it sometimes, not with fear, more like waiting. I even got used to the sounds. See, cemeteries are never really quiet. There's always wind pushing through trees, raccoons knocking over tools, frost cracking under your boots. Once you stop jumping at every creak or whisper, it becomes part of the background. A strange kind of calm, like the earth was breathing in its sleep. Looking back though, that calm was more like the quiet before something hits. I remember one night, maybe mid-January, when everything felt almost cozy. I had just finished backfilling a grave for a man named Everett Long. Big guy, ex-Marine, had a bunch of biker friends show up at his funeral the day before. They'd left little tokens, a leather patch, a Zippo, even a crushed can of Bud. Light on the edge of the grave, I didn't remove any of it. Sometimes you leave the offerings be. That's an unspoken rule. Anyway, the moon was out nearly full and the snow had this soft blue glow under the light. I sat on the tailgate of the work truck, sipping cold coffee and watching steam rise from the dirt pile. It should have been creepy, but it wasn't. It felt still. I even pulled out my earbuds and let the silence wrap around me. Then I heard laughter. Just one short burst. Sharp, high, wrong. It came from behind the caretaker's shed, but when I walked over, nobody was there. I told myself it was a fox. They make sounds like screaming kids or twisted laughter sometimes. It's easy. to forget how weird the natural world can be. That's what I kept repeating in my head. A few nights later, I found another offering left at one of the graves, not one by a visitor. This one was fresh chicken bones, tied together with twine and laid in a perfect circle at the edge of a 1902 plot in Section 6. No feathers, no blood, just the bones, dry and clean, like they'd been picked clean with care. I bagged them, tossed them in the burn barrel, and told no one. Little things kept popping up. More bones. A doll's head at the foot of a fresh grave. Once I found a single black feather tucked under the windshield wiper of my truck. It wasn't a crow. Feather, it was too long. Sleek, wrong. But life went on. We joked around, listened to music, and even talked about trying to organize a poker night at the back office one Friday. Mr. Lott said no, but didn't give a reason. Just said, "That's not the kind of fun we should be having here." I laughed it off with the others. We all did. Because laughing is easier than wondering why your manager is afraid of card games on hollow ground. Then Crow stopped coming in. No notice, no warning. Just gone. His lunchbox sat unopened on the break room table for days. Mr. Lott claimed he quit without saying anything, but Crow wasn't the type to just walk. He had nowhere else to go. No family, no car. That damn lunchbox still had a fresh sandwich inside when we finally opened it. Turkey on rye. No bite taken. I should have been surprised when his name disappeared from the schedule the next morning, like it had never been there at all. But I wasn't, because I knew where he'd gone. At least I thought I did. Section 9. That same day, I got called to assist with a double burial, father and son. Section 4, near the willow trees. It was freezing, but my body felt numb for different reasons. As I worked, I kept checking the tree line near Section 9, waiting to see her, or him, or whatever chose Crow. Nothing showed. That night, I stayed late, just cleaning up the shed, pretending I had something important to do. The real reason was dumb. I just didn't want to go home. My apartment felt hollow, cold in ways that had nothing to do with broken heating. When I finally did leave, it was past midnight. I walked to my truck, fumbling for my keys, when I felt something in my jacket pocket. I hadn't put anything there. It was heavy, cold, and wet. I pulled it out. Crow's lighter. The one with the spiderweb design and rusted flip lid. I hadn't seen it since the last time we smoked outside the shed. That's when I noticed the note tucked under my windshield. Not handwritten. Cut out letters from newspapers. "She's still hungry." That was the first time I vomited in the cemetery. I drove home that night shaking so bad I nearly wrecked the truck at a four-way stop. When I told Diego the next day, he looked at me, eyes flat. "Crow's done this before," he said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "He's left. Disappeared. Couple years back, same thing. Came back after 3 weeks. Didn't talk for a month. I didn't know what to make of that. But that night I dreamed of Section 9, and the sound of digging from under the soil. The first time something was really, unmistakably off was a Wednesday. I remember that because Wednesdays were usually dead slow, pun not intended. No funerals, no burials, just cleanup. Ty and I were clearing leaves from the northern fence line, joking about quitting and opening a food truck, when we heard a noise from the far corner. Not a rustle or crunch of branches. Something metallic. A dragging sound like a chain being pulled through gravel. We both stopped talking. Just stood there listening. Then nothing. "Foxes?" Ty said, half laughing, already walking the other way. But his face didn't match his voice. He didn't want to check it out either. Later that afternoon, I found a pile of soil dumped next to the east tool shed. Not the usual dark, clay-heavy dirt we dug from fresh graves. This was pale. Ashy. It crumbled when I touched it, and underneath it was a pair of old work gloves. Cracked leather, faded red, initials carved in the palm, CM, Crow Morgan. I didn't tell anyone about that. I just buried the gloves back under the dirt and left it all alone. That night something else happened. I was doing a perimeter check after hours, part of the closing routine. As I passed section 5, my flashlight flickered. Not died, not dimmed. It flickered, like something passed in front of it. When the light steadied again, I saw a figure standing at the edge of section 9. Not the woman this time. It was Crow. Or someone wearing his hoodie. He was standing still, arms down, facing the tree line, his back to me. The same ripped sleeve, the same hunched shoulders. I called his name. He didn't move, didn't even flinch. I took one step closer, and the lights on the maintenance shed behind me snapped off. When I turned back, the figure was gone. I told Mr. Lott, the next morning, told him I thought Crow might be back, that I saw him. He didn't even look up from his coffee. "Don't go near section 9 again," was all he said. "But if he's back," I started. "Just don't." He cut in and he sounded tired, not annoyed, not scared, just tired. I couldn't believe how easily he brushed it off. That was the same week I started noticing things inside the caretaker's shed being moved. Small stuff. The flashlight that was always on the left shelf was now on the right. The lockbox had new scratches around the keyhole. My own coffee thermos, one of those cheap Red Stanley knockoffs, vanished for 2 days and showed up on top of the fridge full of salt water. No one else claimed to touch it. I even asked Ty. He just gave me this weird look and said, "Why would I pour fish tank water in your cup?" I didn't have an answer. My phone charger disappeared next, then my earbuds, then my gloves. Each time I thought, maybe I dropped them. Maybe I left them at home. But each time the item reappeared 2 or 3 days later, covered in this fine white dust that smelled like burned wood and wet stone. The same smell from section 9. Looking back though, I think the worst part wasn't losing stuff. It was the sound, the tapping. It started on the walls of the tool shed. Just light at first, like the wind had picked up and something was swinging loose. Then it came in threes. Tap, tap, tap. Silence. Then, again, tap, tap, tap. Always after midnight. I tried to record it once, set up my phone on the windowsill while I pretended to read old maintenance logs. When I played it back the next morning, all I heard was static, not even my own breathing. That's when it hit me. Something wanted me to hear it, but not record it. Ty thought I was joking. Diego told me to pray. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Then the map changed. Each section of the cemetery is numbered on a big laminated chart in the caretaker's office. It's old, drawn by hand, with little red thumbtacks for active plots and blue ones for open sites. I used to study it when I was bored. One morning I came in and section 9 was gone. Not erased, just missing. A clean slice through the paper, like someone took a scalpel and removed that piece entirely. The board looked perfect, like it had never been there. When I asked Mr. Lott, he said, "We don't use that section anymore." I stared at him. "I know, but it was on the map yesterday." He just turned and walked away. I should have pressed harder, should have taken a photo of the map. But I didn't, because deep down I was starting to accept something I couldn't explain. Section 9 didn't follow rules. Not physical ones. Not time. Not space. It didn't care about fences or maps or job assignments. And neither did she. I stopped seeing the woman in the gray dress for a while, but I felt her. That static electricity feeling when your hair lifts and the room gets too quiet. That sense that if you turn around too fast, you'll catch something watching. And if you do, you'll never be the same. One night, I stood outside the shed during my break, smoking one of Crow's old leftover cigarettes. I remember it, because it tasted sweet, weirdly sweet, like someone dipped the tobacco in syrup. It made me dizzy. As I leaned against the wall, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. A shape, low to the ground, crawling along the edge of section 8. Fast, then gone, no sound, no crunch of gravel, just movement. I told myself it was an animal. I told myself that again when I found long, muddy drag marks leading from the tree line into the cemetery the next morning. The tracks stopped right behind my truck, where I'd parked the night before. It started with the lights. I'd be working late, and the motion-activated security lights along the maintenance road would flick on when no one was there. That part of the cemetery didn't have much animal traffic, by just open ground and headstones. I'd watch from the break room window as each light clicked on one by one, like someone was walking slowly toward the main office. But no one ever came. Looking back, though, the worst part wasn't the lights themselves. It was how sometimes one would stay on all night. Even if I went out and reset the sensor, it would click back on the second I turned my back. Like whatever it was wanted me to know, I'm still here. And then there were the footprints. Not boot prints. Not shoes, bare feet, small, too small for a grown adult. They'd appear in the morning sometimes, right outside the gate to Section 9. I'd spot them just before the snow melted, like little impressions with long, bony toes, as if someone had been standing there barefoot in the cold for hours. Once, the prints went all the way to the maintenance shed, stopped right at the back wall, no prints coming back out. That was the same morning I found a nail, a long old iron one, stabbed into the tire of my truck, and under the windshield wiper this time wasn't a note. It was a single tooth, human. I know that sounds impossible. I didn't tell anyone. Not even Ty. I tossed it into the woods without thinking and went home early. Told Mr. Lott I was sick. He didn't ask questions. He never did. That night, I stayed up drinking cheap whiskey and trying not to think about how every missing item I'd lost had eventually come back. Not just returned, placed, in spots I'd have to find. Like it, or she, wanted me to notice. I fell asleep on the couch. I woke up to a sound I can only describe as breathing. Slow, wet, heavy, coming from under the couch, and I didn't move. I just lay there, frozen as the weight of something pressed up from beneath me. Not strong enough to lift me, but there. I could feel it, like someone dragging a hand slowly back and forth along the underside of the cushion. I stayed like that until the sun started to rise. When I finally got up and flipped the couch, there was nothing underneath, except a patch of dead black mold shaped like a handprint. I cleaned it, scrubbed it until the fabric peeled. But it kept coming back. I stopped sleeping in the living room after that. A few nights later, I was back at Whispering Cedars, and everything felt off. Even Diego looked nervous. He barely talked, which was strange. He kept looking toward Section 9 like he expected someone to come walking out of the trees. He left early that night, said he had to check on his mom. He doesn't have a mom, not one that's alive anyway. She's buried in Section 2. Ty didn't show up at all. I was alone. I tried to keep busy, replacing bulbs in the walkway lamps, reorganizing the shed, anything to avoid just sitting still. I didn't want to give it the chance to get close again, but around 1 a.m. I realized the lamp near Section 9 had gone out again. It was brand new. I had changed it myself that same morning. I grabbed a flashlight and went to check it. The air got colder with every step. That strange hush, not silence, just the absence of everything natural, fell over the trees. No wind, no bugs, no sound at all, and the closer I got, the more wrong everything looked. The gate to Section 9 was open again, not just ajar, wide open. The iron hinges squealed slightly, swaying in a breeze I couldn't feel. I should have turned back in, but I didn't. I stepped in. The light from my flashlight seemed to bend like it didn't want to shine too far ahead. I had to sweep it slowly across the ground to even see where I was stepping. Then I noticed something. Every single grave in Section 9 looked disturbed, like something had pushed up from underneath. The soil was cracked in a spiderweb pattern, and in the center of each grave was a small hole, perfectly round, about the size of a dinner plate. As I stared at one of the holes, I felt a drop of water hit the back of my neck. It hadn't rained. I reached back and my fingers came away red. Blood. I looked up. There was nothing above me. That's when I heard it. The sound of someone digging. Not far. Just on the other side of the row. The slow scrape of a shovel in wet dirt. A rhythm. Steady. Patient. Then, a whisper. I couldn't make it out, but it was behind me now. I turned around. Nothing. But when I looked back down at the grave I had been standing next to, the small hole in the center, was bigger, wider, fresh. I backed away, fast. I didn't run, not yet, but I didn't stay either. When I passed the gate, I swear it slammed shut behind me on its own. I didn't look back. Back at the shed, I grabbed the phone and called Mr. Lott's emergency number. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message. I think I was crying. I don't remember exactly what I said. Something about the graves being open. Something about blood. The next morning, the gate was locked. The holes were gone. Every grave looked undisturbed. And worst of all, the lamp was working again, like it had never gone out. Mr. Lott called me into his office that afternoon. He didn't yell. He didn't even deny it. He just said, "If you go back in there again, you're off payroll." That was it. No report, no questions, no concern. I should have walked away. I should have quit. But by then, I knew it wouldn't matter, because whatever I saw in Section 9 had followed me home. About a week after the grave holes and the blood on the neck incident, things got quiet. Too quiet. No new messages. No missing stuff. No odd footprints or lights. Even Ty came back, acting like nothing had happened. He cracked jokes again, offered me half a peanut butter sandwich like he used to. It was like the storm had passed. Looking back, though, that was the trap. I started getting this feeling in my gut, like something was waiting. Not gone, just watching to see what I'd do next. I kept my head down and tried to focus on normal stuff. But the normal stuff wouldn't stay normal. That's when I started finding the pages. It began with one, stuck under the windshield of my truck when I came out of the break room one morning. Not a note this time, not cut up letters, just a yellowed journal page handwritten in faded ink. No name, no date, just this. Buried it deep, it still moved, burned the box, made it worse. I stood there for a solid minute reading it over and over. The handwriting was crooked, desperate, like someone had been writing while shaking or crying. I put it in my pocket and didn't tell anyone. 2 days later, I found another. Page taped to the back of my locker door. This one had a diagram, a map maybe? Scribbled lines showing a rough grid with an X marked in what I recognized as Section 9. Below it, more writing. It feeds on loss, picks at grief. You give, it grows. You hide, it waits. This time I did tell Ty. He stared at the paper and said, "Where'd you find this?" Back of my locker. His face paled. "Dude, that's Crow's handwriting." I hadn't seen enough of Crow's writing to know for sure, but something about that hit hard. My fingers felt numb. My heart thudded loud enough I could feel it in my neck. Ty didn't want to touch the paper after that, just kept shaking his head and saying, "Nah, man, nah." He left early again that night. I stayed. I needed to know. I waited until past 2 a.m., then went to the storage room next to Mr. Lott's office. The room that always seemed locked, always under repair. But that night, it was unlocked. Inside were old records, burial logs going back to the 1800s, shelves of handwritten ledgers. It smelled like mold and mothballs and something, faintly metallic, so like old blood. I scanned through dusty file boxes until I found one labeled Section 9, Retired. Inside were yellowed documents, faded ink entries, photos, the old kind, black and white, some on brittle paper. I flipped through them expecting boring cemetery admin junk. Instead, I found this. Photo number 1, a child-sized coffin nailed shut, covered in red wax seals. Photo number 2, a man in a caretaker uniform, not Mr. Lott, but someone older, with wild eyes, standing over an open grave. There's nothing in it but claw marks. Photo number 3, a headstone. The name was scratched out, just clawed away, gouged so deep it cut through the stone. Attached to that photo was a note, written in the same handwriting as the pages I'd found. We stopped using Section 9 in '73. That didn't stop her. She lives in the roots now, under the stone with no name. I dropped the photo, because I knew that headstone. I'd walked past it dozens of times. Small, unmarked. Always looked a little newer than the others, but too plain to stand out. I thought it was a mistake, a blank stone waiting to be engraved. Now I knew it wasn't. It was a seal. I kept digging, not in the ground, but in the files. And that's when I found the real betrayal. Crow had written dozens of reports, pages and pages of strange events, complaints, drawings, warnings, all signed, all dated, all stamped, rejected. They'd known. Mr. Lott, the board, the old staff, all of them. They'd all known what was down there, and instead of dealing with it, they'd kept hiring people like me, disposable. There was a list attached to the last file. Section 9, Incident Reports. Names. Dates, notes like 1981, G. Lambert, left shoes at gate, found them full of blood. Quit 2 days later. 1992, R. Kimball, claimed to hear music at night. Missing for 6 weeks, returned different. 2007, T. Wills, seen speaking to someone who wasn't there. Terminated, 2019, C. Morgan, marked, advised, to keep under observation. Marked. They'd labeled Crow as marked, like a target. I wanted to throw up. Instead, I took photos of the pages with my phone. All of it. Then I left the storage room and locked the door behind me. That night, I didn't go home. I parked my truck outside a 24-hour diner and stayed there until the sun came up. I scrolled through the photos again, zooming in on every note, every scratched word. Then, toward the bottom of the last page, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Scrawled in tiny writing across the edge of one document. If she names you, it's already too late. The night it all broke open started quiet. Dead quiet. No wind, no animal calls. Just the kind of stillness that makes you feel like you're being watched by the land itself. I hadn't slept the night before. After reading that note, the one that said, if she names you, it's already too late, I'd gone home, turned all the lights on, and just sat at my kitchen table with a baseball bat in one hand and my phone in the other. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but I was waiting. When I showed up to the cemetery that night, something felt wrong right away. The security lights were flickering in a pattern. Not random, a pattern. One light, then two, then three. Pause, then again. 1, 2, 3. Like Morse code, except I didn't know what it meant. I watched it for a minute, frozen in the truck, until I finally forced myself to get out. As I approached the caretaker's shed, I saw that the door was open. That door is never left open. It locks automatically. Inside, everything was exactly where it should have been, except the lunchbox. Crow's old metal lunchbox was sitting on the table again, even though I'd last seen it in the break room, and when I opened it, my blood went cold. Inside was a mirror shard, just one, curved like a broken piece, of a hand mirror, and scrawled into the metal wall of the box in that same shaking handwriting were 3 words: dig or drown. I dropped the box. I grabbed my phone and called Mr. Lott straight to voicemail again. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I called the cops. I didn't tell them everything. Who would believe it? I just said there'd been someone breaking into graves and I needed an officer out here ASAP. They said they'd send someone in 30 minutes. That was the longest half hour of my life. While I waited, I grabbed my flashlight and walked the grounds. My boots felt heavy, like something was trying to pull me down with every step. When I reached Section 9, I stopped. The gate was open again, and the ground was moving. Not shaking, pulsing, like it was breathing, like something deep under. The soil was shifting its weight, the same way a big animal does when it gets ready to stand up. I turned around to leave, and ran straight into Mr. Lott. I don't know where he came from. He didn't even look surprised to see me there. You should go, he said. You knew, I said back. You all knew. You let it keep happening. He sighed. Not angry, not scared, just tired, like always. She's part of the land now, he said. This place needs her as much as she needs us. What the hell does that even mean? I shouted. It's not about you, he said. You were just next. Then he handed me a shovel. That's when it hit me. They weren't just letting it happen, they were feeding her. I backed away, fast, dropped the shovel, ran. I don't even remember reaching the front gate, but suddenly I was standing at the road, headlights blinding me. The cop, Deputy Mills, middle-aged guy with tired eyes. I'd seen him a few times during past funerals, never looked twice at me. But that night he got out of the car like he already knew something was off. I tried to explain, to tell him about the graves, the ground moving, the hole, the photos, the pages. I think I was shouting, rambling. He let me talk. Then he asked, "You been digging in Section 9? I froze. "I've seen the reports," he said. "Years of them. You're not the first to lose it here." "I'm not," I started, but stopped. Because in his eyes I saw it. He knew too. I begged him to come look, just come see the holes. He finally agreed, slowly, like he was humoring me. We walked the path together. It was colder now. The wind had picked up, whistling low through the headstones like something was whispering in a voice I couldn't quite catch. When we reached the gate, the officer stopped. "You go first," he said. That was all I needed to know. I turned back around and ran. Didn't wait, didn't explain. Just got in my truck and drove. Didn't stop until I hit the next town over, pulled into a gas station lot, and sat shaking behind the wheel until the sun came up. When I tried to call the police again, the next day, a different office, they said no deputy by the name of Mills worked in my district. When I called Whispering Cedars, no one answered. And when I drove back to try and get the files I'd stashed in the storage room, everything was gone. The shed had been emptied, the doors bolted, the map board had a new layout. Section 9 wasn't just cut out anymore, it had been replaced by a pond. A small, circular pond I know wasn't there before. Still as glass. No fish, no reeds, just water and the reflection of gray sky. I stood at the edge, staring into it. The trees behind me didn't move in the wind, my phone had no signal, and I swear I heard someone, a woman's voice, whisper my name. Once, twice, then nothing. I walked away, but I've never stopped looking over my shoulder. It's been almost 2 years since I left Whispering Cedars. I haven't stepped foot near that town again. Changed my number, moved states, took work that had nothing to do with dirt or death or graveyards. You'd think time would smooth it over, make it all feel like a nightmare I'd just barely woken from. You'd think I'd convince myself it was all in my head. I wish I could. For a while I almost believed it. I got a job as a night janitor at a high school. Quiet halls, fluorescent lights, nothing but gum wrappers and mopped floors. I started sleeping again. Not great, but enough. I stopped carrying salt packets in my jacket, stopped looking over my shoulder in empty rooms, but I never stopped listening. It started again about 3 weeks ago. I found a feather. Long, black, not a crow feather, too thin, too sharp at the edges. It was under my pillow. That same night I had the dream, I was back at the cemetery, only it wasn't Whispering Cedars anymore. It was deeper, older. The graves went on forever. Open graves, rows and rows of empty holes. In the middle of them, a tree with roots that moved like worms. And under it, her, the woman in the gray dress. Except she wasn't standing this time. She was digging with her hands. Fast, pulling up dirt by the fistful. Her nails weren't nails anymore. They were long, split bone. And she was smiling. She looked up at me and said, clear as day, "You didn't finish." I woke up with mud on my hands, not metaphorical. Actual wet, cold dirt packed under my fingernails. My sheets were clean, my clothes were clean, but my hands, they looked like I'd just crawled out of a grave. I didn't sleep the next night, or the one after. On the third day, I found something waiting for me in my locker at work. The lunchbox. Crow's metal lunchbox. I hadn't seen it in 2 years. There was no note this time. Just one thing inside. A photograph. It was a new photo of me, standing in the doorway of my own apartment, taken from inside. I reported it to my supervisor. He looked at me like I was losing it. asked if I was taking anything. Told me maybe I should take some time off. I didn't argue. I went straight home and sealed my doors and windows with duct tape and salt. I covered every mirror. I unplugged my electronics. I tossed my phone in a drawer and haven't touched it since, but it doesn't matter, because the tapping's back, late at night, on my walls, on the inside of the bathroom mirror, sometimes on the underside of my bed frame. 3 taps, pause, 3 more, and 2 nights ago, I heard her say my name, not a whisper, not a hiss, a full voice, right next to my ear. She said, "Come back." I haven't left my apartment since. And this morning, today, I checked the mail slot even though I've canceled all my deliveries. There was one envelope, no return address. Inside was another photograph. Section 9. The gate was open again. And this time, there was a fresh grave, with a headstone. My name was on it. The statue wasn't always like that, I swear. It used to face the chapel like every other piece of stone in Mercy Hill. But then it turned, just slightly, just enough. And now, every time it shifts, someone dies, always within 3 nights. And last night, it turned to face me. I didn't even want the job. Groundskeeper at a rundown hillside cemetery wasn't exactly a dream come true. But work was scarce, and Mercy Hill paid in cash. I figured mowing grass and clearing leaves couldn't be all that bad. And for the first few weeks here it wasn't. Until I noticed the statue. They called it the Watcher. Some 9-foot angel carved from weather-stained marble, wings outstretched, hands folded like it was praying for the dead. Thing is, it didn't feel like it was praying. It felt like it was waiting. Every morning I walked past it on my way to the storage shed, and every morning I got the same uneasy chill. You ever see something that looks too still, like if you blink too long it might move? The first time I noticed the shift was after old Mr. Carlton passed. He was the type who yelled at kids from his porch and never tipped waitresses. They buried him near the far north row, beneath a crooked pine. 2 days later, I saw the Watcher, facing slightly toward that corner. I figured it was just my imagination. Then came Eliza Tull, sweet woman, taught piano to half the town, healthy, kind, barely 60. She was buried a week after Carlton. 3 mornings later, the Watcher's head had tilted. Not much, but enough to face her grave directly. She died in her sleep that same night. I told myself it was coincidence. People die, statues settle, ground shifts. Still, I started keeping track. Every time the statue moved, I circled the date in a little notebook. I drew lines to the name of the grave it was facing. 3 nights every time dead. I tried telling Pastor Kinnick. He looked at me like I'd said ghosts were dancing in the bell tower. Said I'd been working too many night shifts. Told me to get more sleep. So I stopped talking about it, but I didn't stop watching. Then came the night it turned while I was standing right there. I was walking the western path, locking up the gates, when I felt the air go still. No wind. Not even. The trees rustled. I turned, and I swear on everything I love, I saw the Watcher move. Not fast, not like in the movies, it was slow. A grinding of stone against stone, its head turned to face the east, toward a fresh grave. Micah Boone, 18. Car crash. My knees buckled. I don't even remember falling, but I remember waking, up with dirt on my face and a nosebleed that wouldn't quit. Micah died 3 nights later in his hospital bed, just didn't wake up. Doctors said it was a complication. I knew better. The whole town talks about the Watcher now. Quietly, in corners. They've started calling it the death marker. No one visits the graves it faces. Some people have, even moved their loved ones' plots, tried to get them away from its line of sight. But it keeps turning. It always turns. One woman came screaming into the cemetery last month. Said the Watcher had killed her daughter. She tried to take a hammer to its face. Didn't make a dent. 3 nights later, she jumped off the town water tower, and now, it's facing me. I saw it this morning. Not just the head this time. The whole damn body has turned. Stone robes twisted, face angled directly toward my shed. My name's not on any headstone yet, but I think it's about to. I haven't slept. I keep all the lights on. I've locked every door, covered every mirror, and poured salt across every threshold. Don't even know if that does anything, but it helps me breathe. Last night, I dreamed I was standing in front of the Watcher. Except it wasn't stone anymore, it was warm, breathing, its eyes were open, and it said my name. I woke up with blood on my hands. Not a lot, just enough to stain the sheets. I checked for cuts. Nothing. The worst part? I checked the statue this morning. It's not outside anymore. The pedestal is empty, like it walked away. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it chooses who it chooses, but I think it wants something. And whatever it is, I'm next. If you find this recording, if you hear my voice, don't go near Mercy Hill. Don't visit the statue, and if you have to walk by it, don't let it look at you, because once the Watcher sees you, you only get 3 nights. It started as a game. Just something stupid we dared each other to do during the last weeks of summer break. Ash Grove Cemetery was old, almost forgotten, tucked behind the tree line like something the town wanted to bury and never think about again. The stories about it had been around forever. Kids getting lost in there. Some said you could hear whispers if you stayed too long near the older graves. Others said the cemetery moved, that the paths weren't the same once the sun went down. Of course, we didn't believe any of it. Not, really. There were 4 of us that night. Me, Danny, Marcus, and Tyler. We were all 17. Old enough to feel fearless, young enough to still be stupid. The dare was simple. Go into Ash Grove Cemetery, walk to the big tree in the center, and sit in silence for 5 minutes, no phones, no talking. Just sit and listen. If you heard anything strange, you had to stay longer. Danny was the first to go. She walked straight down the overgrown path, a flashlight in one hand, the other tucked into her jacket pocket like she wasn't scared. We timed her. 5 minutes passed. Then 6, 7. Tyler started to get nervous. He kept checking the timer, muttering under his breath. But right before we hit 10 minutes, Danny came walking back, calm, cool. No big deal. Except she wouldn't tell us what she heard. I'm not saying anything until all of you do it, she said, and sat down like nothing had happened. Marcus went next. He made a big show of it, pretended to be scared, tripped over his own feet on purpose, but eventually walked down the path and out of sight. He came back faster, barely 6 minutes, didn't say a word, just sat beside Danny, pale-faced, mouth shut. Then it was Tyler's turn. He didn't want to go. You could see it all over him. But he didn't want to be the only one who chickened out. He gripped the flashlight so tight his knuckles turned white, then disappeared into the trees. The night got quiet, real quiet. Even the crickets stopped. 7 minutes passed. Then 8, 9, 10. I was just about to call out when I saw him coming back. He wasn't walking. He was staggering, like he'd been punched in the stomach. When he got close, we saw the scratches on his neck, thin lines like fingers had raked across his skin. He looked at us, but it was like he couldn't see us. "I'm not doing this anymore," he said, and walked away, right down the road without another word. I thought he was messing with us, trying to freak us out. I even laughed a little, but it felt forced. Then, Danny looked at me. "Your turn." So I went. The path was darker than I expected. The trees leaned in close overhead. Branches hung low, brushing against my shoulders like hands trying to hold me back. I found the tree easily. It was massive, split down the middle like lightning had hit it a long time ago. I sat down, right on the dirt. Flashlight off. Just me, and the dark. The wind didn't move. The air felt thick. At first it was just silence. Then, faintly, I heard it. A whisper. Not words, just the sound of breath shaping something. Soft. Right beneath me. I held still, told myself it was the wind, moving through the grass, but then I heard it again, closer this time, from under the ground. It was a voice. Not clear, but enough to tell it was trying to speak. A girl's voice, crying. I stood up fast, and the whisper stopped. But when I turned to leave, I heard it again. Not from beneath me now, but from the trees behind me, still whispering, still crying. And then it said my name. That's when I ran. I didn't look back. Didn't stop until I made it back to the road, chest heaving, heart pounding. Danny looked up at me, but I couldn't say anything. Neither could Marcus. We all just sat there, silent. We didn't talk about it after that. Didn't meet up again that summer. Tyler stopped coming to school. He wouldn't answer calls or texts. I went by his house once, but his mom said he wasn't feeling well. Said he barely slept. Kept hearing things through the floorboards. 2 weeks later, he was gone. They found him in his room, door locked from the inside. No note. Just a shallow hole dug in the middle of his bedroom carpet, like he was trying to get through it. I haven't been back to Ash Grove since. Neither has Danny. Marcus moved out of state. But sometimes, at night, when I'm lying in bed, I still hear it. The whisper low and soft just beneath the floor, and every time it's saying my name. There's something about cemeteries most people don't understand. They think these places are just for the dead, but that's not true. Cemeteries are living records. Histories written in stone and earth. Every marker tells a story, every date, a life lived. But it's the unmarked graves that keep me up at night. I've been the sexton at Willow Creek Cemetery for almost a decade now. I know every inch of these 12 acres. Every family plot. Every mausoleum, every lonely headstone leaning with age. I know where the ground dips slightly over century-old graves as the wooden coffins below slowly collapse. I know which sections flood in heavy rain and which monuments attract teenagers looking for a spooky place to drink beer. I thought I knew all the secrets Willow Creek had to offer until last autumn, when the unmarked graves found me. It was a crisp October morning, and I was preparing a plot for Mrs. Abernathy's funeral the following day. Section D, Row 8, Plot 14, a nice spot under a maple tree that turns brilliant red this time of year. I was about 3 feet down when my shovel struck something with a dull clang. This happens occasionally. Old tree roots, rocks, sometimes debris from construction decades ago. I knelt down to investigate, expecting to find a stone or maybe an old piece of metal. Instead, I found a small tin box about the size of a paperback book. It was dented, but intact, sealed tight against the damp soil. No rust. It couldn't have been there long. I should have called someone, should have documented where I found it, taken photos. That's protocol for unexpected discoveries. But something about that little box felt personal, like it was meant for me to find. I brushed off the dirt and pried open the lid. Inside was a single photograph, preserved in a plastic sleeve, black and white, slightly faded, from the early 1980s based on the clothes and hairstyles. It showed a small boy, maybe 5 years old, standing beside a grave. He was holding a woman's hand, but the woman was cropped out of the frame. Only her arm and part of her dress were visible. The boy was looking down at the headstone with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not sadness exactly, more like confusion or curiosity. The boy was me. I recognized myself immediately. The cowlick that never stayed down, the 2 big glasses I wore until middle school, even the dinosaur t-shirt that had been my favorite. But I had no memory of this photograph, no memory of visiting this cemetery as a child. My family didn't live anywhere near here until I took this job. I turned the photo over. Written in faded blue ink was a single line. "He'll return when it's time." I sat there in that half-dug grave for a long time, staring at the photo, trying to make sense of it, trying to remember something, anything, about when it might have been taken. Nothing came. I finished digging Mrs. Abernathy's grave. Mechanically, my mind elsewhere. That night, I called my mother. "Did we ever visit Willow Creek Cemetery when I was little?" I asked after our usual small talk. Willow Creek? No, honey, that's 3 states away from where we lived. Why would we have gone there? What about any cemetery? When I was around 5, maybe to visit someone's grave. There was a pause on the line. Who would we have been visiting? Both your grandparents were still alive then, and we didn't know anyone else who died when you were that young. I didn't tell her about the photo. How could I explain something I didn't understand? Myself? The next day, after Mrs. Abernathy's funeral, I started searching the cemetery records, looking for any connection to my family name. Nothing. I expanded my search to include maiden names, distant relatives, still nothing. I began spending my free time walking the grounds, examining every headstone, looking for, I didn't even know what. Something familiar. Something that might trigger a memory. A week later, I found another box. This one was buried in Section A, the oldest part of the cemetery, beneath an ancient oak tree with no graves nearby. I wasn't even digging. I just felt drawn to that spot. And when I pressed my boot down, the earth seemed to give way slightly. 20 minutes of digging with a hand trowel revealed another tin box, identical to the first. This one contained a child's drawing, crude crayon figures on yellowing paper, a small boy holding hands with a tall figure in black. They were standing in what looked like a cemetery, simple crosses marking graves. At the bottom, in the wobbly handwriting of a child just learning to write, I promise I'll come back. It was my handwriting. I recognized it from old school papers my mother had kept, but I had no memory of drawing this, no memory of making any promise. Over. The next month, I found 3 more boxes. Each one contained something connected to me. A toy soldier I recognized as one I'd lost as a child. A birthday card I'd made for my mother when I was 6. A small brass key I'd never seen before, but that had my initials crudely carved into it. Each box was buried in a different section of the cemetery, each one in a spot where no grave was. Recorded unmarked graves, I realized. Or at least unmarked something. I started mapping the locations, trying to find a pattern. When I connected the points, they formed a rough circle around the center of the cemetery, around the oldest grave in Willow Creek, a weathered stone marking the resting place of the town's founder, Jeremiah Creek. I became obsessed. I stopped socializing, called in, sick to dig when no one was around. My house filled with maps, historical records, genealogies of local families. I was looking for any connection between myself and this place, any reason why these artifacts from my childhood would be buried here. Last week I found the 6th box. This one was different, newer, the metal still shiny. It was buried directly in front of Jeremiah Creek's headstone, just inches below the surface, as if someone had placed it there recently. Inside was a folded piece of paper, not old, not yellowed, fresh white printer paper with a message in clean black type. The circle is nearly complete. 1 more to make 7, then you'll remember why you came back. I haven't slept much since then. I keep dreaming of standing in the cemetery as a child, looking down at a grave. In the dream, someone is holding my hand. But when I look up to see who it is, I always wake up. Yesterday, I found myself drawn to a spot near the cemetery's eastern wall, a patch of ground that's always been empty. No graves, no markers, just grass and wildflowers. Something told me to dig there. 3 feet down, my shovel struck wood, not a box this time, a coffin. Small, child-sized. I should have stopped, should have called the authorities. This was now clearly a matter for the police. Unmarked graves, mysterious boxes, possible tampering with a cemetery. But I kept digging, had to know, had to see. The coffin was old but intact. The lid came away easily as if it had been opened before recently. It was empty, no remains, no body, just a small depression in the satin lining, as if something had lain there for a long time and then been removed. And a 7th tin box. I haven't opened it yet. It's sitting on my kitchen table as I write this. I'm afraid of what I'll find inside. Afraid it will answer questions I'm not ready to face. Why do I have no memories of this place from my childhood? Why did I feel so strongly drawn to take this job in this town I'd never lived in? What promise did I make to return, and most terrifying of all, whose small body once lay in that empty coffin? The box seems to be calling to me, whispering that it's time to remember, time to complete whatever circle began when I was 5 years old, standing beside a grave I can't recall. I think I'm going to open it tonight. I think I have to, because the unmarked graves of Willow Creek have found me, and I'm starting to believe I might be one of them. Thanks for staying with us until the very end. If you enjoyed tonight's chilling tales, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that keep you up at night. Share your favorite part in the comments. We're always watching, and remember, at Nocturnal Narrative Studio, the night never truly ends.